It's time!
Welcome to another episode of On the Bench, and I can't tell you how excited I am to introduce today's guest. He's somebody that I've been following for a few years now as the sport of MMA grows across the world, and it's all thanks to the UFC, of course. It's become huge, but this man in particular has really shone a light on the sport of MMA. He was a young kid from Montreal with a dream of becoming a sports broadcaster. He was part of a secluded Jewish community that was all about perhaps being a doctor and a lawyer. He went against the grain, and this sums the type of person that he is up. He's highly respected and trusted in the world of MMA by all the fighters, and the fact that he's given me his time today is a real honor. I welcome the one and only Ariel Helwani to On the Bench. Mate, thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure, Frankie. Good day.
G'day, mate. Absolutely. Now, I'm glad you're familiar with the lingo. Off the top, before we get into everything that you've done and achieved, I have to ask you a real hard-hitting question in regards to Australian rules football. Recently, I saw you post a video saying that you are now an Adelaide Crows member. I have to ask how that came about.
That is accurate. That came about because on my show, there is a segment called On the Nose where I answer questions from the fans. And one of the fans wrote, hey, I know you support this team, that team, the other team. I know you don't have an Australian rules football club. If I send you some Adelaide Crows merch, will you become an Adelaide Crows fan? I said, sure. The Adelaide Crows page DM'd me and said, we saw your, clip or whatever. Can we send you stuff? And I said, sure. So they did. They sent me a jersey and I think a shirt and a sticker or something like that. So I put the jersey on the desk and now I'm an Adelaide Crows fan. And a lot of people were very upset about this, including, by the way, Israel Adesanya's manager, Tim Simpson, who is of Australian descent, was very fired up that I chose the Adelaide Crows as my team. He had some other team. He's like, I'm like, my fandom has been bought here. Okay. Can we all just relax? And then I was surprised to see like some sites writing about it and tweeting about it. But yes, for the record, I believe it is, we fly as one. I fly as one now because I'm an Adelaide Crow.
You do. And actually, well, I mean, you did cause a stir over here. You were trending that week on all the football sites across the Australian platform. You do fly as one, but can you finish the sentence? We are the pride of South Australia. Over to you.
We are the pride of South Australia. We fly as one. We're the Adelaide Crows. No.
Very, very close. We are the pride of South Australia, and we're known as the Adelaide Crows. Much of a muchness, really. It's all the same.
And where are you right now?
I'm in Melbourne, the epicenter of Australian rules football. So you've picked the wrong team, but that's okay.
I've been to Melbourne once. That was for UFC. Actually, have I been there twice? I was there for 193. Ronda Rousey versus Holly Holm.
Yeah.
Back in 2015. I have also been to Sydney for UFC 127. I hope I'm not offending you when I say I enjoyed Sydney more.
That's okay. It's the LA New York debate.
Yeah, that is a tremendous analogy. You nailed it. It is LA, New York. By the way, I was in Melbourne in November. I found that there were a lot of flies on the water. Is that a common thing?
It is, particularly in summer, and they're absolutely rife at the moment as well.
Gosh, it was really annoying.
A big UFC 271 this morning. I know it's fight day or fight night over there for you. We're excited about 271. Of course, we have our very own Robert Whittaker up against Adesanya again. And then a pretty entertaining fight we think might be occurring between Derek Lewis and, of course, Bam Bam Tuivasa. He just popped up out of nowhere to take that fight, didn't he? And then it'll be quite entertaining.
Oh, Bam Bam is the man.
Yeah.
He's on a roll as of late. He's finishing everyone. He had that losing streak, and he's turned things around. He's a very lovable character. Everyone loves heavyweights. Everyone loves heavyweights who win via knockout. And then he has, in the UFC right now, everyone kind of looks the same, dresses the same because of their uniform. Bam Bam has really figured out how to stick out, with the shoeies and all that stuff. And actually, I had him on my show in early January. And it was actually Bam Bam and Derek back to back on the show. And I asked first Bam Bam if he would be interested in fighting Derek. And then I asked Derek about fighting Bam Bam, and they were both kind of like, yeah, cool, that sounds great, but sort of shrugged it off. And then that night, as Bam Bam tells me, Mick Maynard, the UFC matchmaker, calls up Bam Bam and offers him the fight. So I'd like to think that I made this fight. And if it wasn't for me, this fight wouldn't be happening. So if it's a good fight later on, you can please thank me.
Well, we've got a lot to thank you for anyway, because you have been setting the agenda for a number of years now. I want to talk about your early days, Ariel, because as I mentioned off the top, you grew up in Montreal, Canada, in a Jewish community where it's encouraged to be a lawyer or a doctor. You love sports. Tell us about how it all came about and how you ended up becoming, because you're at the top of your game now. You are the black belt of MMA journalism.
Huh. Well, I don't know about that, but that is true. I did want to be a sportscaster for a very, very long time and work in sports journalism. As you mentioned, I grew up in Montreal, and my parents were very supportive. Like, my friends, I felt like were all kind of going down paths, and I love them, and I'm not begrudging them for this, but just the family business or like the typical things that you're encouraged to do. And I was always kind of a dreamer and someone who loved media and loved obviously sports and loved the idea of talking about sports for a living or writing about sports for a living and just being in this world, because I've always kind of had the feeling that you only get one life and you might as well try to do something that you love in this life. And so I remember being in the ninth grade and reading Sports Illustrated, and there was a little blurb. It was an issue where they were talking about the best schools in America for all sorts of things, and there was a little blurb which stated that Syracuse University, which is a school in central New York, was the best school in America for sports broadcasting. And I remember a light kind of going off in my head, like, wow, you can actually go to school for this. Like, there are actual professionals that went to school for this, and they listed some of the famous alumni, and it was really famous people. And so at that point, I kind of decided I want to go to school for that. I want to do this for a living. And lo and behold, 4 years later, I did go to Syracuse, and that kind of just began. That was in 2001. That started my path to this world of working in media.
And since then, you've gone on. I think this is correct. You're a 10-time MMA Journalist of the Year award winner. I mean, that's some pretty good stats you have there, Ariel.
Yes, it is nice. It is voted on by the fans, which I appreciate very much
Mhm.
because fans sometimes have a love-hate relationship with the media, and the fact that they have supported me for this long really means a lot. So yeah, I'm very grateful. I'm very thankful, and I don't know, man. Like, even if, like, from the very beginning, the fans, for whatever reason, maybe because I wasn't fake, or
Mhm.
they kind of viewed me as a real fan. Like, they always had my back. Of course, there were moments where they crap on you online, and there's trolls and things like that. But for the most part, I felt um, you know accepted by them and welcomed by them when I was starting out. And when I was starting out, I was very raw. I don't think I'm that good right now, but I'm definitely not, I'm nowhere near where I was like back then. Back then I was super raw and super awkward on camera.
Well, you say that you think you were raw, and you say that you don't think you're that good now. I disagree. I think you have a way about you which is so easy to watch. The way you articulate yourself, I think, is incredible without being disrespectful to fighters, but still getting what you want to say across. And I think that's also why you are respected by so many of the fighters and the managers, because there's always been a divide between, in my opinion, between media and athletes, and I don't think that exists with you and the fighters. Why do you think you are so respected by the fighters? Because that's a pretty awesome thing to have.
Well, I appreciate that. I think it's because I've never betrayed their trust. I think when you betray anyone's trust, but in this case, a fighter's trust, like, you can't get that back. It's very hard, right? If someone breaks my trust, it's hard to get it back. And um I've really been very focused throughout my entire career of being trustworthy. When someone tells me something off the record, it's off the record. Someone tells me something, in confidence, it's in confidence. I'm not going to go out there and report it or break their trust or anything like that. And um yeah, I feel like I've always treated them fairly. Like, there's this misconception, you're an instigator, you're a potster, this and that. If I truly was that, then they wouldn't be talking to me. They wouldn't be, coming on my show. And I think that it's because I treat them with respect. I have the utmost respect for what they do for a living, and I don't take that for granted. And I think in turn they feel that. And Of course, when you're doing this job, you have to be critical at times. You have to talk about things, but I try to do so in the most respectful way possible.
Well, it certainly translates in all of your interviews. And you have spoken to everybody. I could reel a list of names off, but it would go forever. I mean, Conor McGregor, Khabib, Brock Lesnar. You've been in the company of everybody from the early days to now. What's it like being in the presence of someone like a Brock Lesnar or a Conor McGregor?
Yeah, I mean, it's great. Honestly, I have never gotten starstruck. I've never been afraid. I've never been intimidated. I enjoy the thrill of being in front of someone and having the opportunity to ask them, important questions. I know a lot of people would love to be in that position, so I'm trying not to blow it. I'm trying not to take, it for granted. But I've never felt like in awe of someone or felt like I, can't speak or can't articulate my thoughts or say my questions correctly. It's great. It's amazing. There's a rush. There's a thrill. There's a anticipation. There's a buildup. There's a buzz. There's all those things. I mean, it's just a huge luxury and an opportunity to just live a very interesting life. So I'm very thankful for it. And yeah, I mean, being in the presence of Brock or Connor or the Diaz brothers or GSP, John Jones, Daniel Cormier, the list goes on and on. It's been awesome, man. There's times where I can't believe that this all actually worked out the way it did. I'm very, very thankful.
Now, if you don't mind, I know you're a journalist, so you'll respect this question I'm about to ask you, and it would be remiss of me if we didn't go down this path, but we'll keep it brief. Not so much showmanship shown from Dana White's perspective, and your relationship with him has probably soured a little bit over the years since I think it might have been UFC 199, around about that time where your accreditation was revoked. How are things these days with Dana? And is he someone you think you could possibly have a beer with one day?
Well, I'm not a big beer drinker to begin with, so I wouldn't even have a beer with my wife per se. But I know that's not the answer that you're looking for. I would describe my relationship with him as non-existent. I haven't texted with him since 2016. I haven't talked to him in a private setting since 2016, since that UFC 199 situation. Obviously, he's not a big fan of mine, and I don't need to be a fan of his. He's a person who I cover. We don't need to be friends. We don't need to hang out. We don't need to, go for beers or anything like that. And actually, having this kind of relationship with him, which is a non-existent one, is actually easier on me because I could just tell it like it is. I don't have to worry about any repercussions if I say something critical. Now, I would argue that the vast majority of my coverage is quite positive towards the UFC because so few people are critical of the UFC that the times that I do speak up, I think they become, a little bit more pronounced. But anyone who consumes my content will know that A, the vast majority is positive, and B, mo- anytime that I am critical, it's coming from a place of facts and honesty and integrity and ethics. It's not coming from me talking, taking cheap shots or going below the belt or anything like that. So it's okay. I didn't get into this business to make new friends. I didn't get into this business to be best friends with anyone. It's nice to have respect. It's much better, for the most part, when you're in good standing with people. And I would obviously rather be in good standing with everyone, including Dana, but I don't lose sleep over it. Of course, he's, made things personal, affecting my job and my livelihood. That's a whole kind of different discussion for a different time. But as far as like my feelings towards him, they're just kind of he's a subject that I cover, nothing more, nothing less.
For those who don't know it, it was UFC 199, and you're pretty much escorted out, if I'm correct. You reported facts about Brock Lesnar returning in UFC 200, and it was just pretty much all about the UFC wanting to be first to reveal that. And then you went with it, and then all of a sudden, out the door.
Yeah, sure. I mean, there was a whole buildup of months of like sort of tension up until that point.
Okay.
And there's also a common misconception, like there's some sort of weird revisionist history that my credentials were taken away and they never were given back. They were given back 48 hours later. Um, and I've been to events, I went to events that I went to the next event. I was at UFC 200. Yeah, I was at the next event. The reason I'm not at events now, well, I stopped during the pandemic because ESPN didn't want me to go to any events or any of us. And then, my employment changed and everything. And as I said earlier, I don't really have to go. I haven't applied to an event. So it's not like I'm banned or anything like that, at least from my perspective. Maybe they've since banned me without me knowing or telling me. But I just want to clear up that the ban, quote unquote, lasted only 48 hours.
A dream came true for you in 2018 when you signed a 3-year deal with ESPN. What was it like when you did that as that young boy who went to school to become a journalist, and then he signs with one of the biggest networks in the world, and being part of the UFC coverage and everything like that? Was that a realization for you that, hey, I'm starting to achieve all the things that I set out to?
Yeah, it was massive. When I got the initial offer from them, I actually started crying because it was a dream of mine to make it to ESPN, and I couldn't believe that I'd finally made it. It took me a really long time to get them to notice me, and I felt like this was sort of like the end all be all. Like I had made it to the New York Yankees, if that analogy means anything. So it was a huge, huge accomplishment, and I'm very proud of the fact that I made it there. And I'm proud that I survived the 3 years because I wasn't even sure if I was going to survive the 3 years. And no one could ever take that away from me. I made it to ESPN. I left on my own terms. I was happy with the work that I did there. I think I did more than was asked of me, and I left with my head held high. So yeah, it was great. Even though it obviously didn't go the way I thought it was going to go, I would have regretted for the rest of my life had I not tried it. So I'm happy I tried it. 3 years, all good, and much happier now.
I've been following a lot of the UFC fighters that go into the boxing ring. Of course, we had Dan Askren who did it against Jake Paul. That didn't go very well. And Tyron Woodley did it twice. Now, you were front and center for both of those circuses, if you like. What was that experience like, being around Jake Paul for that lead up and all the weigh-ins? And the two interviews, you were front and center, going like this and like this and like this, back and forth. How was that for you, representing Showtime?
Oh man, it was great. I really enjoyed it. It was a great opportunity. Um, just to get to be in the ring, to work on the broadcasts, and to do the post-fight interviews, and the buzz was great, and the crowd was. I mean, like everything was really special. So, again, that was another dream realized. Like I never got a chance to be in the ring and do post-fight interviews, and that he's talking about things like fighter pay, and his events are a big deal. In Cleveland, it was a big deal. In Tampa, it was a big deal. It's a lot of fun. It's something a little bit different. But I enjoyed it, and we did those face to faces beforehand. Those were fun. The post fight stuff was fun. All in all, great experiences, both of them.
Do you think Jake Paul is the real deal?
I'll tell you what, he's better than a lot of people think he is.
Mm.
And he's fighting better people than most fighters fight in their fourth, fifth pro fight, even if they're an MMA fighter coming over to boxing. These guys have been in 20, 30 fights, have been competing. Usually when you're in your fourth or fifth fight, you're fighting a can. So I have a lot of respect for him. And anyone who steps in the ring through the ropes has my respect. If you would have predicted that the stuff that he's doing now, would come to fruition back when he started 2 years ago, you would have been laughed at. And so, now he's part of this Katie Taylor Amanda Serrano fight. That's a huge feather in his cap, and I'm hoping that he sticks around and he breaks more barriers and makes more things happen, because I so far, I mean, I think he's only been good for the world of combat sports.
There's probably not enough money in the world to pay Conor McGregor to have that fight with Jake Paul, but do you think that would be something that would happen again? And speaking could happen. Speaking of Conor, actually, do you think we'll see him in an octagon ever again? Because some photos lately, he could be in a Marvel movie. You saw some photos with Justin Bieber recently. What's going on there? He's jacked.
Yeah, he is jacked. I mean, honestly, I would say never say never. I mean, who would have thought that he would have gone up against Floyd Mayweather, right? So I don't think it's a crazy thought, to be honest. It could definitely happen, and that would be an insane scene. I think that could do over 2 million pay-per-view buys, if they're both like kind of still relatively famous and in their prime and whatever. So yeah, I would not, after the Floyd Mayweather experience, I was like, all right, never say never to any of this. I mean, Logan Paul went up against Floyd in an exhibition, and who thought that was going to happen? I certainly didn't. So all bets are off. If these guys want to make it happen, there's too much money. Someone once told me, follow the money. And when there's too much money to be had, to be made, never rule out any of these crazy fights.
Now, speaking of crazy fights, let's talk UFC 271, which is happening today. Israel Adesanya and Robert Whittaker, their second bout. Adesanya is the clear favorite. What are your thoughts going into this one?
I think it's a great fight. I think it will be closer than the first fight. I think it probably goes the distance. I don't make predictions because the fighters are very sensitive and they get mad at me if I don't pick them. So that's been a rule of mine for a long time. But I think it will be a very entertaining fight. I mean, I think Izzy's one of the biggest stars in the sport. He's must-see TV every time. Whittaker is incredible. His lone loss at 85 is to Izzy a couple of years ago. He's won 3 straight since. So yeah, this is one of the most anticipated fights of at least the first half of the year. I'm looking forward to it very much, and I think it will be a closer fight than the first time they fought a couple of years ago.
Now, Ariel, before I let you go, I just want to thank you very much for being part of this little show from your big show. You're doing wonderful things and you've inspired a lot of people, myself in particular. I resonated with your story as a kid when I was reading up about you and some of the things you used to do when you pretended to interview your friends and pretending that you were sports broadcasting in your bedroom and all those sorts of things that I used to do around the same age. What's next for you? You've got the MMA Hour that you love, is your huge passion, that you do your own podcast. What else? Where's the ceiling?
Oh man, I hope I haven't even scratch the surface as to what I can do and what the ceiling is. I love interviewing people. That's probably my favorite thing to do. I love that I live in a time where you can interview people for as long as you want, whether it's on, YouTube or podcast or anything like that. So I'm very happy to be doing my show again. I love interacting with the fans. I love doing the shows that I do, around the events for The Ringer. And the stuff that I'm doing with BT, with pro wrestling, is fun as well. And I'm really enjoying doing my own show, the Ariel Helwani Show, where I'm interviewing, just people outside of the MMA world to show people that I can do that. Dan Ricardo, one of those guests, Kelly Slater, recently Steve-O of Jackass fame, so many great, Mario Lopez, AJ Hawk, who's a famous football player, Patrick McAfee is a famous media guy here in America. So I'm enjoying that a lot as well. And, I just want to keep going. I feel very blessed that I get to do this for a living. And I hope that the dream doesn't end anytime soon and that I can do this until, my final days.
And I'm sure the millions of fans across the world are hoping the same. Ariel Helwani, thank you so much for your time. Much appreciated. I know you're an extremely busy man, so the fact that you've taken the time out to talk to me on this little podcast is much appreciated. Enjoy 271, and I wish you all the very best for everything that's yet to come for you.
My pleasure. Good luck to you, and thank you for having me. I appreciate it.